All right, everybody, welcome to another edition of the Vibin Higher Podcast. As always, I am your host, Trevor, and today I've got a real treat for everybody out there, especially those of us that are into alternative and holistic health, which I think and believe is probably the majority of you guys out there. But firstly, I just wanted to give a little shout out to our friend Greg Carlwood, who is the host of the Higher Side Chats. Now, we had Greg on our podcast just a couple months ago. It's really awesome. Greg has been a big inspiration to me in everything that he's doing with his show, and he's recently added a subscription service to what is already a great podcast, meaning that now for a low price you can get an additional hour of every show that he's doing, which is now something like 5 shows a month. He's doing it really regularly. The guests are only continuing to get better. So head on over to thehighersidechatsplus.com, check it out, and support somebody out there that's doing something good. With that, we will move on to our guest, who was a woman by the name of Rosanne Lindsay. Now, Rosanne is an author, naturopathic doctor, as well as holding her MA in environmental health. And we got to talk about all kinds of stuff, from meditation to the denaturing of our society and what we as individuals can do to combat that. We talked about the ego. We got into spirituality. We talked about loving yourself, and we just got into all kinds of really cool stuff. And Rosanne is truly a wealth of information, as you'll see on all of this type of stuff. So without further ado, here is our conversation with Rosanne Lindsay. All right, Rosanne. Well, first of all, I just wanted to thank you for joining the show. I'm glad that we finally got to sit down. I know that there's been a few things in between the both of us, but we've been talking for a few weeks. You sent me a copy of your wonderful book, which I hope that we can get into. Just thank you for joining us.
Well, Trevor, thank you for the opportunity. I'm really honored, to be asked, since I think your presence, along with other people in your field, is so important as an alternative viewpoint from the mainstream dogma that, serves to confuse everybody and makes us all feel helpless. I know people are hungry. As a naturopath, I see this all the time in their questions. They just don't know what they're hungry for. And so until I think they hear something that resonates with them, that resonance is truth, they don't know what to believe anymore. So thank you for what you do to bring truth to light. Really appreciate it.
Well, thank you. Yeah, you actually, before we hop into it, I wanted to say you wrote something in the book which really resonated with me, which I think was a really important quote. You wrote, "Be your own hero," and I actually sat there and thought about that for a while, and I think that that's something that we can all sort of take to heart in the world that we're living in right now and the changes that are being made. I think we all need to sort of do our own part in what we feel is important. So I thought that was great.
Well, thanks. Yeah, I think we're all inundated by so many messages. We're confused all the time. We're taking on this confusion as stress, and stress is not a thing. It's the way people react to a thing. And if we can understand the true meaning of stress, we have a choice. We always have a choice in how we respond. And the product of who we are now is based on all our choices we make. And when people take on stress, it's like a roadblock. They become stuck. They freeze. It's the fear, fight, or freeze response. And so many things start changing in their body, chemically, physiologically, but, emotionally too. That emotion, people get stuck in emotions. And when they do that, they just keep spinning, and they can't think for themselves. They can't become clear. They can't become aware of that they have their own answers. And so what we tend to do is, if you give up our power to find our own answers to other people who are quote unquote experts in the field of whatever question we have, and we see that in this medical paradigm that we've all come to accept, that these experts don't always have our answers, or they have conflicting answers if you go to 2 different people. And we really have to understand that we carry our own answers, and we can be our own heroes. We can find our own answers. We can find people who resonate with us, messages who resonate with us, and go from there. And it doesn't have to be done on the spot in a rush situation. I think the medical community wants us to feel helpless and hopeless and depend completely on them. And we don't have to do that. We can step back, take a deep breath, evaluate. You haven't come to this point without, resources, and you can always find those resources.
Absolutely. I think that that's one of the beautiful things about the times that we're in now is that we do have the internet, and people like you are able to get their information out there. And, the average person can, find another viewpoint than the one that their doctor's telling them, that I think in the past has typically just been the only voice that they've heard as their health goes.
Right.
So we're able to, we've just got this whole new paradigm to deal with, and I think that it's a great thing, and I think that the connectivity and the resources that we have via the internet are really sort of the game changer, and what we as humans are doing with it.
Right, especially what you're doing with it, what other people in the natural news business are doing. They're getting information out. There is no excuse anymore not to have information. Ignorance is a choice in today's modern age, So it's just a matter of trusting yourself. It's coming down to the basic philosophy that there are people out there to help guide us, but really when it comes down to it, it's a choice that we make in what we do with our own bodies, what we do with our own minds, what we do, how we act. What I like to do is a naturopath is talk about healing, natural healing, as body, mind, spirit medicine.
Mm-hmm.
And we're all of those aspects. So for long-term healing, for any healing, you really have to address all of those, come into balance with body, mind, and spirit. Because if you only focus on one or the other, the physical body or the mental body, and neglect the spiritual, you heal in fragments and you don't heal for very long. So, if you give two main points that I like to talk about with clients or in my book is, one, if you give the body the tools it needs, the tools of nature, the body heals itself. We are part of nature. So, and the other thing is that we're each a physical body and an energetic being. We're the biophysical and the metaphysical, the seen and the unseen. So understanding our multidimensional nature means that we heal on all levels simultaneously. And the medical paradigm does not talk about this. They feel that you have to go to an expert and many experts sometimes, because they hold the keys to unlock your organ systems. And they see each organ system as a void within itself, disconnected from everything else. But really, we are holistic. We are all body, mind, spirit all the time. And when one level is healed, we simply move to the next. We unpeel ourselves like an onion. And in this way, I talk about in the book that the life journey is really the healing journey. We never stop healing because we never stop living until we do stop living.
Mm-hmm. You're right. No, and I think that on that note, I think that we sort of have, and I think maybe even deliberately, been misled as a race to believe that we are just sort of this skin and bones being, right? I mean, and that we're sort of in the business of hiding symptoms, or hiding symptoms, I guess you would say, instead of truly healing yourself.
Right, and they want to look at us as a disease label that they can identify based on the symptoms that we have, that we express, and so that when they can do that, they can say, well, this drug will treat these symptoms. But treating a symptom is not the same as healing the body or the underlying core problem. And so in the medical paradigm, it's disease management, it's disease-based. So they only talk about disease. They do not talk about health. And as energy goes where attention flows, if we're always talking about disease and symptoms, are we really healing ourselves? Are we really finding health, true health? And true health and vitality comes from both the physical and the spiritual, because vitality is a word that describes vital force. Vital force is that energy that comes through us, that's around us. Some people call it scalar energy, some call it the 0 point. not many people talk about it in the medicine paradigm, but there are doctors, younger doctors coming in who understand this, but they really can't talk about it openly. So I feel for them. There are good people in medicine. They just have to be very, strict about what they can offer.
Mm-hmm. I think that's part of still being stuck in that sort of old paradigm that may or may not have been deliberately built that way. But like I have family members who are in medicine. I've got a family member who's a nurse who, and I've talked about this on the podcast before, but that sort of lives and dies by the American medical model, and anything outside of that is sort of quackery to her. But I truly feel that we're sort of on the edge of a new paradigm, kind of what we've already been talking about, and I think that we're sort of bursting forth into that, hopefully. But anyway, these are all things that I wanted to get into, but before we got too deep into anything, I did want to talk about your experience with hypothyroidism, which is something that you talk about in the book, and sort of what brought you into what you're doing now, and bringing this information to people, healing people, and let's get into that a little bit.
Sure. Well, I think what brings everybody to kind of finding their passion or their purpose is something out of the ordinary, and sometimes it's a disease diagnosis that you weren't expecting. I mean, who expects a disease diagnosis, right?
Yeah.
Sometimes it's a death in the family or a death of a pet or something that just shakes your world, rocks your world. And for me, I had always been very health conscious, organic foods. I was raising my kids. I was watching what was affecting them, changing that. I was focused on so many people outside myself, which was one of the core problems that led to my disease diagnosis. Okay. So one is that you're not putting yourself as a priority. The second thing is stress. Stress. People take on stress, chronic stress, and they don't even realize it. And I think that was another issue for me. I was a stay-at-home mom. I had already a degree. I had been an environmental scientist. I knew how to do research. I had worked in the field of environmental science for the US EPA for 3 years before I decided to stay home. And suddenly I'm alone at home with these 3 kids, and nobody's ever taught me how to be at home alone with 3 kids. It was with one child first. I didn't have triplets, but it was really the first 6 months that was just a complete shift for me. I didn't have access to a car. I couldn't get around. I was suddenly alone after being exposed to a lot of people all the time, and that was a big shift. So I was telling myself that, I can handle this. This is good. And really, I was lonely. I didn't have a lot of friends. I was trying to build that up. So that was stress. And then just helping my daughter, deal with certain food allergies along the way, and finding out that she's lactose intolerant like me. But long story short, I was married with 3 kids, helping other people on the side with their health, because that's what I love to do, is investigate healing. And I was working with foods. I was part of the Weston Price organization. I still am, where we talk about nutrient-dense foods, fermented foods, whole, live, real foods that come with enzymes that help you digest the foods that you're eating. And that's really a big problem with people today, is they have so many digestive issues because they're eating so much processed food, refined foods, that no longer has enzymes. So if we're eating dead foods, our bodies are going to respond to that. And I was starting to develop symptoms over several months. It came on very suddenly for me, actually. Hypothyroidism can come on over many years for people. It's actually an epidemic in this country. Most people over 40 are going to be diagnosed with one form of thyroid disease, whether it's hyper, or for me, it was profound hypothyroidism. Mm-hmm. So that for me was a slap upside the head. I was like, how could I, who am helping somebody with reverse their thyroid disease, and who's supplementing with iodine to prevent it, how could I be diagnosed with the most profound form of it? And this form is where the thyroid completely shuts down. So I'm not making any thyroid hormone. My symptoms are fogginess, extreme fatigue, e- puffiness in the face from a lot of edema that's collecting, weight gain, some depression, even though I told myself, no, I'm not depressed. um,
Yeah.
I am this perfect mother, wife. I fit this role. I kept telling myself this even until, I was starting to develop this hoarse voice, which is a symptom of profound hypo. And I just told myself I just sounded sexier. So I'm like, and suddenly I couldn't walk half a block. It came to the point where I couldn't walk half a block without my heart feeling like it was going to give out.
Right.
This extreme pressure, breathlessness. And at that point, I'm like, what is going on? And I did the only thing I knew I could do. And that was to call my mom.
Yeah, right.
I didn't go see the doctor. I really tried to stay away from the doctor, even though ironically, I was married to a doctor at the time. And when I found this out, I already knew what I was going to do. It was so ironic. He told me he was going to put me on this synthroid medication, it's levothyroxine, which is thyroid hormone. That it's one thyroid hormone the body makes. We actually make 4 or more. And I already knew that I didn't want to do that. And I told him what I was going to do. And that set me on my path. And I asked him only for his help in monitoring my blood levels, and it was the levels that I wanted to check. I didn't want just one level, which is the TSH level, which is what they do, standard practice. But TSH is a test that monitors for thyroid stimulating hormone, which comes from the pituitary gland. And so that's an indirect measure of what the thyroid's actually doing. They should be doing a whole range of testing. And for most people, they don't. And so a lot of women out there are dealing with symptoms of thyroid disease, and they don't know it because the doctor says you're perfectly fine. You don't fall within our ranges. And they tell them to go home or take an antidepressant because it's all in your head. And these women are really suffering. And so it really goes back to not only lack of thyroid hormone, but what is the underlying cause? Stress. So for me, it was, okay, I knew what I was going to do physically. I knew what I was going to supplement myself with, not only a different form of iodine, because taking one form of like Lugol's iodine is potassium iodide and iodine together, which if you can absorb it, will work fine. But I apparently was not absorbing it. My transport, it's called a iodine symporter, was not working, was malfunctioned, and it has to do with a methylation deficiency. And so I'm actually going to write about this in my second book on just the thyroid. It's going to be much shorter, and it's going to talk about kind of all the things that I went through.
Oh, wow, okay.
So when I found that out, I realized I needed co-nutrients to help my iodine get into the cells. And so I worked with people outside the medical industry to help me do that. I was taking extra selenium, extra zinc, vitamin C, folic acid, B vitamins. Folic acid actually, or folate, needs methylation to be able to be absorbed. And so my methylation pathway was not working, so I needed to take the actual B vitamins that are methylated. And that's what a lot of people with autoimmune disease, which is profound thyroidism, if I didn't say profound hypo, is actually an autoimmune disease. So in these people, they're not absorbing because their methylation pathways are not working. So I was taking vitamins specifically to help me absorb iodine and to work with iodine, because all of these co-nutrients help iodine work better. And so all of this thyroid disease that we see in this country is an iodine deficiency, but it's also, if it's autoimmune, it's a methylation issue. So doctors don't understand what really needs to happen physically in the body to reverse the disease. So that's why they always keep you on the medication, which is only one hormone, and because they're managing you with the disease. You're never recovering. So I'm saying in my book and just with my clients, you can reverse it. You give the body the tools it needs, and the body reverses. So, and the other things that I was doing with, mentally, emotionally, and spiritually is, I was trying to understand that mentally, there's a deeper message here. For me to have profound thyroidism is significant. As a health coach or somebody who is telling people how help their thyroid, it was not. I really had to do some self-evaluation. And what I found is, when you're healing mind, you're talking about belief systems and thought patterns. And for things to constantly, when we become stuck in a pattern, which stress can bring us to, we produce the same outcomes. And those all stem from belief systems. And if we can identify that belief system which keeps us stuck, we can change the belief system and then therefore change the pattern and the outcome. And what I found was that the way I was interacting with somebody very significant in my life, my husband, was not working. And so for me, I had to reevaluate the relationship and understand what that meant. And for me, it meant eventually separating and divorce. And I did that very compassionately. We did it as friends, and we have 3 kids together. I wanted them to see this as kind of make it our own story, and that we don't have to make it a sitcom. It's something that we're all going through, and we can do it slowly and with love. And it worked really well. And as I was doing this, I was also meditating regularly to help me understand how to do this. And I was doing yoga regularly, and I was meditating daily. And because I really recommend meditating, because it helps you find your answers. It quiets your mind to the point where you can listen for answers. You're not praying is really asking for something, and meditation is being able to listen. And I take that guidance that I learned from meditation in my practice by listening to my clients, because often when they're talking to me, they tell me the answer, even though they may not hear it themselves. They're telling me the core problem of what's wrong in their life. And if they're going to heal something physically, I need to know what's going on in their life to help them emotionally, spiritually, to help them heal at the core. So I realized that in this spiritual quest for answers, it always comes down to a basic fear. Something we fear in life keeps us from reaching our potential, and opportunity is always on the other side of fear. And I was getting these messages, and I was trying to figure out what was my biggest fear. Well, I think for everybody, the biggest fear is love, finding love for yourself. And here I was questioning my choice in mate, and feeling like I wasn't getting what I needed. There wasn't an equal energy exchange. But, I think it all comes down to, in relationships, whether it's with somebody in your life, or relationships with your community, or relationships with your state government, relationships between countries, it all comes down to what's going on inside of us. So it's all about the relationship with self. And I had to look at my relationship with myself and find what was self-limiting about what I was dealing with. And I think it was, I needed to learn how to love myself first before I could love others enough. Once you fill yourself up, you have enough overflowing that can feed others. But really, so many people are giving so much to other people all the time that they neglect themselves. And this is a problem with many women in this country, and I really feel that thyroid disease is a problem with self-love. And so when you can make yourself a priority, which is what I started to do, then you can help other people around you. And it's easy. It's not difficult. It's not stressful at all. You love to do it.
Well, let's talk about that for a minute, because that's something that you often hear about is loving yourself, or making yourself more of a priority. But can we dive into that a little bit? Maybe what that might mean, or how somebody might go about, going down that road?
Sure. Well, I like to talk about spirit as your inner child. So it's that spark, divine spark, that separates you from the rest of the crowd. So it's really getting to know yourself on a different level. You see the person in the mirror. You've come to believe who you are based on systems that have entrained you since kindergarten. And so you may have gone into kindergarten as your complete self, wanting to share who you really are, but then being told, okay, you have to conform to these standards, and you start changing yourself for other people suddenly. So I think it really starts there. If you can learn right from off the bat that we really have to keep that inner child with us as we grow up and not suppress it. That's the main thing. So for me, it was, how do I express that inner child? For me, I grew up dancing. I love dancing because I didn't need to speak. And for me, this fear that I'm talking about that's preventing me from opportunity was public speaking. I would freeze if I had to speak. And here I am talking to you.
Right. Putting it out on the internet.
Yeah, I mean, really.
Well, even writing is sort of a form of that, because I mean, you've got this big, huge book over here with all this great information in it, but you were sort of able to do it on your own without having that immediate conversation effect, I guess.
Right. But like my daughter just reminded me, dancing for me was a way to express myself without using words, and so was writing. I loved writing, and it was really what this was telling me, that I had so much to get out, but I didn't want to do it with words. I wanted to do it through any other way. But I've always been a writer, and I don't think I can't separate myself from that. But really what this has all led to is, how do I get my book's message out without speaking? And so still on this level of healing, we heal in layers. I'm still like, this is another level for me to be able to speak. And so many people along the way have come into my life to help me do this. Joni Abbott, who is on Natural News Network. She's a radio show host. You know her.
Yeah, Joni's amazing.
Yeah, she's been on. I've listened to her interviews. She's great. Robert Scott Bell of the Robert Scott Bell Show. They have given me opportunities and really believed in me to do something like that. And so I thank them, and I thank you. And it is really not about me, though. It's about this message that I'm getting through. And who knows, I may have been dancing the message for a while, and then now I'm writing the message. And so what you asked is that, how do I get to that spiritual level, that energetic level? It's being able to express your inner child. So for you, Trevor, if I could turn the table.
Yeah, please do.
What do you love to do? Which is what your inner child would love to do.
That's so weird. People often ask that. That's just sort of one of those things that will come up in conversation. I don't know. I myself like writing, and I do want to commend you, not to turn the tables back, but the book is excellent. You are an incredible writer, so I hope that you don't stop. I too myself love writing. I love reading, and that's why one of the things that you said earlier sort of resonated with me, because you said that fear will sort of stop you from doing something that you love, and for me, it has been sort of the fear of putting, I guess, my writing, which is sort of this kind of window into who you are, out there on the internet, where of course the trolls live. But it's like you said, it's getting past that fear, and I haven't had a negative experience yet. I mean, of course, there's the internet is the internet, and if anybody has ever looked at the comment section of any YouTube video, you'll understand. But you just have to realize that that kind of stuff is always going to be there, and there's sort of this weird bitterness that lives in some people that like to hang out on the internet. But exactly. I would say that probably writing and reading. I love nature. I love getting out there. I love fishing, music. I guess a lot of things.
That's great. And I think it does often come back to nature, because our nature is nature. So we can often, if we don't meditate, inside in lotus position or whatever, we can go out into nature and find that same feeling of quiet, really connecting to ourselves, because I think a lot of what's happened with the medical paradigm and with other institutions that are failing us in this country, whether it be economic, political, social, religious, it's this disconnection with ourselves and with the planet. And we are self-regulating and self-healing just like the planet is. And we, as the example of the emotional healing, you have to change your emotional diet just like you change your physical diet to be able to heal. That's how we self-regulate. And so it's not as hard as we would think. We do have to connect to that inner child and what we love to do, though. That's the key, and that's what I found in my own healing. So I would recommend that you do start writing. And as a writer, I can say that writing every day, even if it's just a couple blurbs or whatever, something you dreamed and you just want to write down, that's the best way to start. Or just write down your thoughts about something, go in nature and write, because it's like building a muscle. The more you use it, the better you become.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, that is great advice. I thank you for that. On that same note, well, a lot of that was actually kind of a good caveat into something else that I wanted to get into, which is one of the first chapters in your book that you talk about the denaturing process. And I think that I see that as one of the big issues that we're having as a species, I guess. That, I mean, you're talking about that we are nature and we're part of nature, and that nature is pivotal to our ability to heal ourselves and to, maintain these normal levels. We sort of, like I said, we sort of have really gotten away from that. And I think you did a good job of explaining it in the book. But you see these people, I mean, there's people in the big cities that haven't stepped foot on grass even for how long? They live in their apartment, they walk to work on the sidewalk, they go into their building that's lit by, whatever those light bulbs are, and,
Right.
and they're there all day until they go home at night and they get, 15 minutes of sun. And it's a big issue, right? I mean,
It is, and they wonder why they're stressed at the end of the day. We're so exposed to so many toxins in not only the food we eat and the water we drink and the air we breathe, but just through the news and the information, the dogma coming from the media, and we're inundated from all angles. And how do you disconnect from all of that and reconnect to your true nature without having access to nature? And my daughter's going to be in that situation next year. She's moving to Chicago for college, and she is a nature girl. And so I don't know, the things that you can do is, I would say, meditate, but also try to get out in nature when you can. And all you have to do, one of the things I recommend, is earthing, which I don't know if you've done before.
What's that?
Earthing is going out any little spare piece of grass or dirt that you see, something other than concrete or a sidewalk, and just connecting the soles of your feet, the bare soles of your feet, to the earth. Because when that happens, the negative ions from the earth come up through the body, and they basically realign energetically your chakras. You start feeling from the energy body out to the physical that things are aligning, and you feel immediately calm, first of all, just by being in nature you do. But when you can connect your feet to the ground, amazing things happen. And there's this book called Earthing. I can't remember who wrote it at this point, but he talks about studies that were done, scientific studies showing all the different issues that people have, joint issues, pain issues, back issues, that correct themselves if you can do this on a regular basis.
That's so funny, because I was gonna ask you about that there's some sort of grounding effect simply by being barefoot on grass, or I guess even dirt or sand at the beach.
Exactly.
Okay.
And being in the water, being in the ocean water, is so healing. They used to do that in sanatoriums or sanitariums hundreds of years ago. They would have these sanitariums on the ocean shore, and people would be in the ocean waters to heal, and then being in the sun, because both are healing. The salt water has the same mineral profile as your blood.
Oh,
And
wow.
the sun actually has energetic, qualities that are not only absorbed as vitamin D in the body, which is a steroid hormone that boosts the immune system, but it also has energetic components that help, your whole body.
Well, maybe you can answer this. I think that probably based on what we've just been talking about, it might be true, but this is something that I've always heard, that's just by being outside, and if you can kind of get away from maybe any streets or highways and any just sort of like urban noise, and just getting out into nature, that just the sound of nature has some sort of healing quality.
Absolutely. Yeah, there's studies that are being done on this now. Even having plants in your house can help, because if they're doing well, then you're going to be doing well.
Mm-hmm.
You can monitor your health sometimes by the plants in your home or by the pets in your home. They're all symbols and signs for you. A lot of what I talk about in the book too is that our environment, our direct environment, is simply a reflection of what's going on inside of us. So if there are things that are falling apart around the house, and or the car engine goes, and all of these things happen at once, people say, oh, everything happens in threes. But you might want to look deeper and see, okay, is something going on within myself to show me? The world is showing you all the time through dreams, symbols, synchronicities, things that are going on within you. So it may mean, if you pay attention to your dreams, that you need to reconnect back to nature, back to where you came from, back to who you are.
Okay. Hi. So can we get into maybe the importance of dreams? Because that's something that I'm definitely really interested in, but I have a terrible time remembering my dreams, like ever. It is a very rare occasion that I wake up and have any sort of memory about what I was dreaming, but nearly every morning I'll wake up with that feeling, knowing that I was just in some intense dream.
Yeah, well, I've been the same. I've wanted to remember dreams for a long time, and only recently have I figured out how you can do that. So I'll be happy to tell you.
Yeah, please.
For you, but first of all, physically, B6 is a vitamin that helps the nervous system and calms the nervous system, and it helps a lot of things. It helps blood circulation, blood pressure, but in stress, and it helps the adrenal glands. So if there's a lot of stress going on, B6 is really helpful to kind of relax you and calm you, and maybe open up that way that you can remember dreams. I've heard that B6 does help people remember dreams. Okay. The other thing I would suggest is that when you go to bed at night, make it your intention that just say to yourself, I intend to remember a dream or my last dream. Usually people will remember the last dreams they have before they wake up, and there's a reason for that. That's the one you're supposed to remember. Mm-hmm. So even if you don't remember a whole night of dreaming, that's fine. That may have your astral body is out and about enjoying the life that you don't know about. It's like you lead a second life when you go to bed. Mm-hmm. And you're connected to this astral body, which comes back. And what you can do is when the astral body comes back, don't move as you're waking up, and allow this body to come back into yourself slowly, so you kind of maintain that state between dream and wakefulness, and hold it there. So don't move around quickly when you're waking up to get out of bed. Try to hold your posture, hold the feeling you have, because it's really about the feeling. Our dreams are really there to tell us something that comes through our feelings, and usually through the heart. So we really have to kind of make it your intention to focus there and what the feeling was, because sometimes people will remember dreams, but they won't understand it. But go back to the feeling of the dream, and then the answer might be there. Okay.
Yeah, you mentioned the power of intention, and that's something that I'm definitely well aware of. I've experienced the benefits of positive intention in my life before, but it's almost one of those things where you sort of the ego kind of takes charge, and I'll get into these cycles where I'm doing really well in using that and meditating and using all these good practices, and then next thing I know, it's been 4 or 5 months since I've done anything, and everything kind of spun out of control there for a minute. Yeah, and I feel like you've talked about meditation a couple times, which is something that I've done in waves in my life, and I 100% experience the benefits of that when I'm doing it regularly. I feel like, and am I wrong in making the assumption that what the average person is sort of doing and experiencing in today's age with technology and everything, and in having a TV on in the background and an iPhone in front of them and a computer behind that, and having all of this input, it seems to me that it's really almost sort of the opposite of what you're trying to do when you're meditating.
Right, you got it.
So that can't be good, right?
Well, I think there's when we talk about healing, it's always balance. It always comes down to balance. So whether it's eating the right foods, coming into balance, body, mind, spirit, aligning all your chakras, coming into balance, or just managing your life. If you're going to be, like I'm on the internet a lot too, and so there's always has to be a balance in life. You have to make room for that. You have to make room for the opposite or the absence of. It's like health is our natural state, and disease is not the opposite of health, it's the absence of. Falsehood is not the opposite of truth, it's the absence of. And we start thinking like that, we see that where we need to prioritize is the positive, and everything else, don't give so much attention to, even though, okay, so you're going to be on the computer and you're going to have all this, you're connected everywhere because of what you do. But you can also unplug, and it's really important to unplug and just get rid of all of that, whether you go off on vacation or whether you just go in your backyard and earth, do some grounding. There are a lot of ways to do it. But like I said, getting to your inner spirit, inner child, it can mean going out dancing, doing something that's joyful and makes you happy, because all this other connection is fine and it's important, but it can cause stress. So it's really just finding the absence of stress, I think.
Okay, so more of sort of filling that void instead of trying to find the opposite of what might be there.
Right. Good way to put it. I like that.
Wow. So, I mean, do you meditate daily? I mean, is it something that we should be doing multiple times a day? I know that when I was at my best and meditating at my most regularly, I would meditate every day, between 20 or 30 minutes. Sometimes I'd fall asleep and it would end up, being this hour-long thing. But active meditation for 20 or 30 minutes a day, and I can say with a high degree of honesty that those were some of the best periods of my life in terms of what was happening to me, my productivity, what I was doing with my life. So I like I said, have seen the benefits there.
Yeah, for people who first start out meditating, it can be pretty daunting because you'll have this expectation of you're going to reach enlightenment. And I think that's whole life purpose is to finally reach enlightenment at the end.
Yeah.
But so you have to be kind to yourself, first of all, when you're meditating, and just allow whatever's going to happen. If you start thinking about, if your mind goes off in this direction or that direction, fine. Don't beat yourself up over that. Just go with the flow. And then if that doesn't work, after a couple times, you might try guided meditation. That's what really helped me, is to connect. I did plug into a guided meditation with my computer and just listen to a sound of another voice directing me, guiding me, and which is what we do when we go to yoga class anyway. Or you can listen to music, which balances the hemispheres of your brain to help you get into that state, that theta state, or state where you can release the chaos of the day, the thoughts of the day, and just kind of go in a different place. So it can take some time, but the fact that you've done this for a long time lets you know that you can go there whenever you need to, and it doesn't have to be a daily practice. Sure, it does not, because it's not for me. Sometimes you can change up meditation by doing a chant, and Kundalini chants are amazing. I've done several. One of the chants actually was an endocrine gland chant when I had hypothyroidism. I'm glad you brought this up because I almost forgot to talk about it. That was the last key in reversing my thyroidism.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and I got it from my yoga teacher. It's called the Kirtan Kriya, and it's Satanama, are the vowels, the four sounds that you say repeatedly, but while you're doing a mudra, which are hand positions. And you're sitting there focusing on these sounds, which means, I don't know what they mean. A Satanama are the four primordial sounds that's common to every language. And it's like birth, growth, death, regeneration, or something like that.
Oh, wow.
And it's always a cycle. So after you commit to 40 days, though, because it's a commitment to yourself, right? Mm-hmm. Anything that's worth something is something, everything. Anything that's worth committing to is worth doing the time. So in this chant, if you miss a day, you have to start from the very beginning. So I made it my intention that I would not miss a day, and I did it. And at the very end of it, I was at a conference, and there was this Indian healer there, this energy healer, and I asked him if he could check my chakras, and see if my thyroid was healed. And he had, he said, well, okay, sit down. And he was in back of me, and he He did his thing with his hand. He kind of scanned my body and he said, "You don't have a thyroid problem."
Oh.
And that was my answer right there. And so, yeah, it was amazing. That was the end. It was like that was the last day, or within the last day of when I had done the chant. And so I really believe in these chants because they align you. They align your chakras. They work on all systems of the body, neurologic, endocrine. Everything's connecting and syncing up. And you're not only in tuning to yourself, you're tuning to the universe, which is what you do when you meditate. So I'm doing another 40-day chant right now, and I got up this morning. It's a sunrise chant, so I have to get up right before the sun. I end up usually having to go back to bed for a couple hours because I can't keep up with that. But at my age, 49, but you know what? I find that all of these things, they bring you to a new level. They increase your energy. So even though I'm 49, I feel like I'm like the healthiest I've ever been. I feel like I'm in my 20s. And I think that if I muscle tested myself, my cellular age might actually be 29, not 49. So, I think age is just a number. People get so attached to a number and what it means, and they define it in a way that is self-limiting. So I don't talk about age. We're body, mind, spirit. We're at least 3 different ages, right? We're an earth age. We're what we believe we are as far as that age, and we're ageless. So, take an average of all of those.
Well, I think it says a lot, honestly, that you just sort of came out and said your age right there, because a lot of people, not to be offensive or anything, but women mostly are sort of, the age thing becomes a pretty sensitive thing as they get older, right?
Right, because we're taught to believe that.
And we have this epidemic of people, men and women alike, now that are trying to reverse the aging process by going out and getting spliced up and getting parts from here sewn on there and parts from over. You know what I mean? It's like when in all actuality, if everybody sort of began to follow a path like you have, healing all 3, mind, body, and spirit, I think that they'd have a lot better results. At least that's my opinion.
I believe you. You've convinced me.
Well, before we wrap it up here, there was a couple more things that I wanted to get into. First of all, it's something that we have talked about a little bit here, but I wanted to talk about the ego and why the ego gets such a bad rap. As I understand it, it seems like such a complex thing to me, but as I understand it, it seems to me that it is sort of a mechanism that maybe we as humans have developed to understand ourselves. It's sort of that inner dialogue that you have. Is that the ego?
I think that's perfectly said. I think the ego is like a filter for what comes through us, through what society tells us, what other people tell us, what a mirror might tell us. It's like a mirror to our soul. The ego is like the opposite. Well, I should say, I don't like the opposites, to talk opposites, but it's the ego and the spirit work together hand in hand. They're partners. So for the ego to get a bad rap, it has been taking us down the wrong road. Ego is our friend, and we have to actually embrace it and know that the ego collects those things that we tell ourselves that are maybe negative so that we can grow and get through it and transform ourselves from it. So the ego is a mirror, just like anything around us is a mirror to show us who we are. And I think if we can accept the ego as a friend, it kind of calms down. It settles down like a cat, in your lap, and it just starts purring, and it helps you identify, okay, if we're friends now, what is the next step? It basically allows you to open up to the possibilities and allow the universe to help you, because you're not blocking it with your ego telling you, oh, you can't do this, you can't do that, you're not good enough, you're not lovable enough. Once the ego knows that it has no power over you, once you know you are the power, the ego melts away. It melts into what it's supposed to be, which is part of spirit.
Well, I know I like that a lot because I think that if you want to talk about daunting, that everybody talks about you got to smash the ego, kill your ego. I've always seen that as something like maybe the ego is probably always going to be there. But I like what you're saying about instead of trying to demolish the ego, maybe sort of aligning it with yourself and using it as a tool.
Yeah, because it is part of us,
Okay.
Exactly. Use it as a tool. Everything in our reach is a tool. So it's like stress is also a tool. You can choose stress to be a gift, or you can choose it to be a roadblock. Because stress is, like I said, not a thing. It's the way you respond. So you don't have to take on stress. You can see it as a gift. And when everything in life is a gift because you are a gift. And just kind of focus on that you're here for a reason. You're here to share your gifts. You're here to express yourself through those gifts. And it's when we stop using those gifts and stop expressing ourselves that we start disconnecting from who we are, disconnecting from nature, from the planet, and that's when we lose ourselves. So it is about renaturing to come to who we've always been. It's funny that we come to Earth to find out who we are, but that's the truth. That's the truth, I think. It's what I've discovered anyway, for what it's worth. And we are all expressions of this great source, this great energy. We're all connected to it. We're all the same that way.
All right. Well, I also kind of wanted to get into how does we keep coming up with these daunting tasks here, but you truly are a great person to answer these questions. How does somebody who's maybe not so versed in a lot of this stuff begin to learn to interpret messages from the spirit, or be aware of that type of thing?
Well, that's a good question. That's a basic question, and I hope I answer it in my book. But the book is kind of built, each chapter builds on the last one, so I hope by the end you have a really good comprehension of how you do this. But you have to look at your body, I guess, as a tool, like you were talking about, and any sign or symptom that comes up should not be ignored, first of all. So, if you have acid reflux after eating a meal, you shouldn't just take a purple pill and hope that it goes away. Because each time you do that, your body's going to treat it the same way. And when we ignore the signs of the body, that's when things start building up until you do get slapped upside the head like I did. And it really goes beyond the physical. What I'm talking about, it's all starts in the energy body, because we're a reflection of what happens within. So it always starts there. Something might have been brewing for 20 years or 2 months, and it all starts in the emotional energy body. So we really have to ground ourselves in some way and look at our emotional state and find out, are we more in an emotional state of happiness and joy, or are we more in a state of sadness, depression, frustration? We have to analyze ourselves. We can't just ignore ourselves anymore, because look at the state of this country. We rank dead last in a ranking of 17 nations, all third world or first world nations, I should say. We rank dead last in health outcomes. And we're supposed to be the most advanced technological medical system in the world. We spend the most money on health, and yet cancer rates are rising, sickness is rising, death rates are climbing. What is going on?
And that is, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but wasn't about 50, 60 years ago, we were sort of at the top of that list, correct?
Well, that's what maybe one survey might have said at the time.
Okay.
Yeah, I think all things being equal all around the world, at some point, probably before the 1950s, we were probably there at the top, because we had good sanitation systems in place. We had food, good food. We hadn't yet started applying pesticides to all the farmland. We hadn't genetically modified the food. We hadn't refined most foods. Most people lived on farms and grew their own food, drank their own milk. We were eating live foods. We were connected to the earth. And I think after the 1950s, when we started exchanging grass-fed butter for vegetable oils, we started harming ourselves. And when we started taking in more toxins than pushing out of the body, we started harming ourselves. So it really does go back to nature. It really does. What are we doing to the planet? Whatever we do to the planet, we do to ourselves. That's how connected we are.
Mm-hmm. Well, and I think, did you ever see that study called Death by Medicine that was done by a bunch of medical doctors? I think it might be at this point a few years old now, but it basically states that the biggest killer in the United States beyond cancer and even heart disease is the American medical system. Have you heard of that? It's called Death by Medicine.
Yeah, there's a couple studies out there that show that Western medicine is they claim the third leading cause of death in this country, but that's
Okay.
I think that's a conservative estimate. But yeah, there was another study that said when the hospitals were closed in an area for a certain period of time, death rates actually fell. So, people are getting hospital infections in hospitals. It's too sterile. There's too many things that we're killing ourselves because we're killing our bacteria. The medical system with the antibiotics and these sterilization techniques are taking the basic, the smallest part of us is our bacteria, yet it's also the most prolific. We're more bacteria than human cells, 10 to 1 bacteria to human. So our whole immune system is based on making sure our beneficial bacteria get what they need. And so when we constantly destroy our bacteria, whether it's over the planet with chemicals in the air, because we have a layer of bacteria up in the troposphere that surrounds the planet that we didn't know about till recently. We're killing those in the air. We're killing them on the land with pesticides. We're killing them in our bodies with genetically modified foods and altered foods. When we start killing the majority of who we are, we destroy ourselves. So we have to take a look at the smallest inhabitants. We're no greater than our smallest inhabitants.
Mm-hmm. Well said. But I do think, and I say this probably on every podcast, that we are on, I hope, the upswing. If not, I think that it's really right around the corner. Just the fact that you and I are having this conversation, I think, is a sign of that. Conversations like this are being had all over the world in a greater number every day, I think. So that was absolutely amazing, Rosanne. I did want to give everybody in the audience a chance to know where they could get in contact with you. Certainly where they can get the book, which I highly recommend, which we haven't even said the name of the book yet. We're really blowing it here. It's The Nature of Healing, Heal the Body, Heal the Planet. An amazing book. A really nice, big, thick book. And I've also said this before, but I don't think that there's any substitute for having an actual nice, good book in front of you. It's something that you'll always have. I have quite the library myself there, my prized possessions. Yeah, I don't think you can beat it. But let's let everybody know how they can get in contact with you, any social media, the website, where they can find the book, where they can buy the book.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, thank you. Thank you for that. The book actually is heavily referenced. I just wanted to say I give credit where credit is due.
Oh, yeah, I did want to say that too. It is.
A lot of the studies I cite are from peer-reviewed medical journals, so they help me prove my points that how disconnected the medical system is, and so hopefully they won't argue with me too much because I'll be pointing right back to their studies. So there's 10 pages of references, over 400 references. I was trained as a scientist. Environmental scientist, so I do respect what science can offer. But you can get my book either through Amazon.com. It's on Kindle through Amazon. It's on Nook at Barnes and Noble, and I think those are the main places you can get it. My website is called natureofhealing.org, and I'm also on Facebook, Rosanne Lindsay, or Nature of Healing on Facebook.
Perfect. And I will say that everybody, if you do have a Facebook out there, should follow her. You're very active on Facebook, and I can't tell you how many times just in the last month or so that I've clicked on links that you've put out there. So that's really good.
Great.
And I'm looking at it right now. You I don't know if this is the normal version that you've given me here, but there's really 40 pages of references in the back of this book.
40? I thought there were 10.
No, I'm looking at it right now. There's 40.
Oh wow, I haven't looked at
And that's
that.
no, that's amazing, because people like my grandma that I spoke about at the beginning there will people that don't want to believe, or on some level are afraid to believe, need that kind of thing. If they can even find it in themselves to go as far as to pick the book, or pick the book up, or watch the movie, or whatever the case may be. But
Right.
I do recommend the book to everybody. Anybody that's listening, check it out. Support somebody that's out there doing something really important. Rosanne, like I said, this has been amazing. I'm taking away a lot from this. I know that the audience will take away a lot from this. And we'll definitely have to have you back on sometime in the future. We actually really didn't get to a lot of the stuff that I wanted to cover, but I mean, we covered more than I possibly could have hoped to in an hour. So.
Well, great. Thanks so much, Trevor. I really loved this time with you, and I'll be happy to come back anytime.
Perfect. All right. Well, we'll catch you next time, Rosanne. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
All right, folks, there you have it. I hope that you all got just as much from that as I did. Rosanne Lindsay truly is an amazing woman, and with everything that we just talked about, I really don't think that we even began to scratch the surface of what is truly an in-depth book. I mean, you heard it, there's 40 pages of references at the back, really lending a lot of credit to her work here. So definitely check the book out. It's The Nature of Healing, Heal the Body, Heal the Planet. You can check out her website at natureofhealing.org, and check her out on Facebook, which is Nature of Healing, or just by searching for Rosanne Lindsay. So we'll have to see if we can't get her on Twitter, which I believe to be the reigning champion of social media outlets, especially for online activism, what we're doing here. But thank you guys for listening. As always, check out our website. It's vibinhigher.com. There's a forum there that really hasn't been put to any use. It's really well done. Come and help us make a community there. As well, we're on Twitter. It's at Vibin Higher. We're on Facebook. We're on Google+. Just do a search for us. Check it out. And as always, give us some feedback. Suggestions, criticisms, or if you just want to have a chat. Get in contact with us, and thank you from the bottom of our hearts for listening. We hope you guys enjoyed, and we'll catch you next time on the Vibin Higher Podcast.